Hello, everyone. Welcome to the I-9 Like a Pro. My name is Bill Soroka. I am the author of Sign and Thrive, How to Make Six Figures as a Mobile Notary and Loan Signing Agent, and host of the Side Hustle Lounge podcast. I'm so excited to be part of this presentation today, thanks to our friend Judy Lawrence. Judy, thank you so much for bringing this idea to the table. And thank you to Judy Lawrence, of course, is the founder of Lawrence Institute for Notaries, also known as the Queen of the Apostilles. Judy, are you here and available for just a quick hello?
I am, Bill. Thank you very much for introducing me, and thank you for bringing this idea to the forefront. Notaries, you are going to love this presentation.
I love it. And thank you for introducing us to Harry Nash, who I'll get to introduce here in just a moment. And Matt Miller, founder of the California League of Independent Notaries. Thank you so much for your commitment to the notary community and being a part of this as well.
You're very welcome, Bill. Thanks for having me today, and welcome all notaries. This is a constantly asked about topic, and I'm looking forward to Harry Nash's presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. And of course, Laura Buer is also part of the presentation as well. I don't think she's going to make the live event, so we'll get right down to it. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Harry Nash. Harry is a management and program analyst for the Department of Homeland Security. He knows all about I-9 and employment eligibility verification. So that's what we're going to geek out today in the notary community. Harry, thank you so much for being here today. I am going to unmute you. Harry, you want to hit that unmute button? And as Harry does that, guys, there is going to be a presentation from Harry on the screen. We are recording this, so if you miss anything, you can catch up with it. And we're going to have a live Q&A at the end. So hold all your questions to the very end or type them into the chat, and I'll be moving those over to a document so we can ask Harry, so you have all that information that you need. Oh, there he goes.
Okay, I unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Yep, sure did.
All right. Okay, good deal. Good deal. Well, hello, everyone. I want to thank Bill, and I want to thank Judy and Karen, everybody for having me, and Matt for allowing me to come present to you today. I want to thank you. I'm going to pull the presentation back up real quick. Bill, and you let me know when you can see it.
Yep, sure will.
Please. Okay. All right. Let's go here. Let's see. Slideshow. Beginning. Okay.
And Harry, you're no longer sharing, so you just want to hit the share button again.
I'm no longer sharing. This technical stuff is not good for me. I'm a good presenter, not technical, man.
Hey, that's all right.
This is not my forte here. So I'm not sharing anymore. Okay, share. Am I sharing now?
You are sharing your screen. We just need to see the presentation now.
Okay. All right.
Oh, perfect.
So can you see the presentation?
All right.
now?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh man, see, I can get this technical thing down if I have to get a chance. Okay, I want to thank Judy for she was one to talk to me, and I want to thank everybody for allowing me to present today. This is the Form I-9 employment eligibility verification presentation. Now we offer different types of presentation. This is one here is what we call our public presentation, and we have another version where we have customized webinar presentations as well. Now, even though this one is technically considered a public, it is still a customized session because we're doing it specifically for a specific organization or specific organizations. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I know everyone has busy schedules. I appreciate it. I hope to live up to the billing that I got. I enjoyed meeting Judy. We met at one of my other presentations. She was the highlight of my presentation, one of the highlights of my presentation. I found her to be very friendly and very cordial and very nice, and it was a pleasure speaking with her. I enjoyed meeting her, and I love to get a chance to interact with her any chance I get. And Bill and Matt, I'm looking forward to eventually at some time meeting you guys in person so we can all meet together, and that would be great. Like I said, this is the Form I-9 presentation. This presentation will take roughly about a little bit under an hour. I will try not to bore everybody. If I'm too loud, I'm sorry. I'm a former drill sergeant. I spent 28 and a half years in the United States Army, so I cannot get rid of my command voice. It is here to stay. So I will try to soften it up if I can, but I want to make sure everybody can hear me clearly. If you can't hear me clearly, please point that out, and I will speak a little slower if I'm going too fast for you. Also, that also comes with being a prior military drill sergeant as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the presentation, and I will address questions towards the end of the presentation. Bill, we can open up and I'll address the questions at that time. Will that work for you?
Yep, that's absolutely perfect. And anything that goes into the chat window, I'll be copying and pasting and keeping track of those questions for us.
Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on with the presentation. Like I said, this here slide is basically just a disclaimer that we have to read when we do any of our presentations. And it just simply says that the presentation is intended for employers and their authorized representatives. This presentation provides basic guidance about the rules and responsibilities during the employment eligibility verification process. Now, for more information, we do welcome everybody to please visit our I-9 Central site. Now, that link that you see here where it says I-9 Central, that's a live link. So, Bill, you feel free to share the presentation, a copy of the presentation, whomever wants it, that's fine. We have no problems with that because it's on our public website anyway. So you can share it if you feel the need. So please do so.
Perfect.
The I-9 Central site is exactly where you want to go. If you want to find out any information about the I-9 or the Form I-9, you want to go to our I-9 Central. It has a bevy of information about anything that's going on with the I-9, anything that's going on new with the I-9, any current policies or procedures that are enforced by the I-9. You're going to find them there as well too. And we have a whole bunch of other resources and information on the I-9 Central site itself. All of our any publications that has to do with the Form I-9 or any questions you might have. We also have an outstanding Q&A section on our I-9 Central. And what that does is what we took all the questions that we get. We always take random questions and place them on our Q&A section on the I-9 Central. And what that is, so anytime anybody asks any questions, especially if they're really good questions, we always post them on there so that everybody can see the questions and also see our responses to those questions. So if you've never visited our I-9 Central site, please, I highly recommend that you take and you go to the site and you just click it on one of your favorites and book it in one of your bookings as one of your favorites so that you can constantly refer back to the I-9 Central site. And it also keeps you up to date. Anything that's come out new about the Form I-9, any revisions or whatever, you can also find them there as well. So let's continue on here. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about the background about how the Form I-9 came about. We're going to talk about how you complete the Form I-9 and all three required sections of the Form I-9. That's usually one of my test questions. I usually ask and I'd say, how many sections are there on the Form I-9 that has to be completed? So now I'm going to change it a little bit and I'm going to ask this question, Bill, and I want you just to read just a couple of responses as you get them in when they come in. If somebody can please tell me, out of the three sections or out of the three sections on the Form I-9, how many sections are required where you have to fill in information on the Form I-9? So how many sections are required where you have to actually fill in information in each section?
There's lots of threes.
Lots of threes?
Or
Okay.
only section 2. We got first
Only
section,
section 2.
second section.
Okay,
One.
then you got first.
All kinds of different
Okay.
answers.
Well, that's good. That means the audience is participating. I like that. Usually when I do my live presentations, I have a nice big bag of candy. So if somebody got it right, you get a big, nice piece of chocolate. I'm sorry I can't do that, but maybe Bill, Matt, or Susie, maybe they can give you guys some candy at a later time on my behalf. Okay, so let me answer that question real quick. Out of the three sections, there's 2 sections that you're required to fill out when you're doing the Form I-9. But if it comes to re-verification, then you will have to also put information in section 3. So the proper answer is there's 2 questions that require information to be when you initially fill out the Form I-9. That is section 1. That section is to be completed by the employee. And then there's section 2, which has to be completed by the employer or somebody that the employer designates as their representative to fill out that particular section 2. Here's the caveat to that part as far as section 2, because we get a lot of questions about this. They say, JR, well, can I have somebody else oversee my Form I-9s? Yes, you can designate somebody else to oversee your Form I-9s, but you must remember that any errors or any mistakes on that Form I-9, that employer is still going to be responsible for any mistakes or any errors on that form. So if you choose to designate somebody to oversee your Form I-9s, we highly recommend that you make sure that that person has received at least the basic training as far as when it comes to Form I-9. So I want to make sure I say that again, because I want to make sure everybody understands what I'm saying. An employer is responsible for overseeing the Form I-9. That particular employer is responsible for overseeing their particular Form I-9s. Now, they can designate somebody to oversee or to authorize somebody to oversee their Form I-9s. But even though they might designate somebody to oversee their Form I-9s, that employer is still going to be held responsible for any errors or any mistakes when it comes to that Form I-9. I just want to make sure that that's clear. Okay, so now we're also going to talk about when it comes to storage, and retention. What I mean by storage and retention, we get a lot of questions as far as say, well, JR, how should we store our Form I-9s? Or how long should we retain our Form I-9s? We're going to talk about that too as we go down a little further in the presentation. Well, now we're also going to talk about the Form I-9 and E-Verify. This is the biggest misconception about Form I-9 and E-Verify. A lot of times, a lot of employers think that they're the exact same thing. They're not. The Form I-9 and E-Verify are two separate entities, but they work in conjunction with each other. Now, here's the other test question I'm going to ask Bill, and you can see some of the responses on there. Which do you complete first? Do you complete the E-Verify, then the Form I-9, or do you complete the Form I-9 and then E-Verify? I'm curious to see some of the responses.
Getting lots, well, a couple, it looks like I-9. They're saying I-9 first. Yeah, lots.
That
of
is
I-9s.
correct. That is correct.
All right,
that is
guys.
correct. Good job, audience. That is correct. Yes, you definitely want to do the Form I-9 first. You cannot do E-Verify unless you do the Form I-9, because the information from the Form I-9 is what gets transferred into the E-Verify database. Okay, so that's important to remember as well too. Now, we get a lot of questions as far as about, well, is E-Verify, is that mandatory? It's not mandatory in all states. If you want to know if it's mandatory in your particular state, you check with your state legislation and you ask them, they will let you know if E-Verify is required by employers in that particular state. So again, I want to make sure everybody understands that Form I-9, you're going to take your information from your employer. You're going to take that information from the Form I-9. You're going to transfer that into the E-Verify database. And we will go a lot more down into the woods with that one when we go a little further as well. And then lastly, we're going to talk about all the resources that are available when it comes to Form I-9 and E-Verify. And we have a lot of good resources, so we're going to talk about that as well. So Bill, I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me clearly? Am I speaking clear enough or slow enough, or am I going too fast?
Loud and clear for sure, guys. How do you feel about the speed? Yes, very clear. Yeah, looking good.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you. All those years paid off being an instructor and drill sergeant. That's good. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the background of the Form I-9 and basically how it came about. So basically what happened was back in 1986, in an effort to control illegal immigration, our Congress passed the immigration, what we call the Immigration Reform and Control Act, or as we commonly refer to it as IRCA. Now, IRCA states that no employer, I repeat, no employer is allowed to knowingly hire individuals who are not authorized to work in the United States. Now, the Immigration Reform and Control Act created a need for the Form I-9. Now, the Form I-9 is just a tool, mind you, and we want to say that again. The Form I-9 is just a tool to help enforce the law and make certain that all employers are verifying that their individuals that they hire are authorized to work legally in the United States. Now, employers are required to do a Form I-9. Employers who knowingly violate or circumvent the Form I-9 process or the anti-discrimination requirements of the INA may be subject to civil and or criminal penalties. Now, if you want to learn more about IRCA and about the INA, then all you have to do is you can find that information in section 274A of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Now, I would highly suggest, if you want to read it, get yourself some Oreo cookies and a big glass of milk, because you're going to need a lot of time. It's the thick reading, and you want to do it when you get ready, right before you get ready to go to bed, because it'll put you to sleep pretty good. It's good information, but it'll definitely put you to sleep. So get yourself some cookies and some big glass of milk and sit down and have a good read, and you'll be good to go.
We're used to dry reading like that. I love it.
There you go. Me, myself, I love nothing that I love more than a nice big pack of Oreo cookies and some glass of milk to get me right. So, okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit as far as about IRCA. Now, IRCA establishes 4 categories of individuals who can legally work in the United States. Now, for this purpose here, for the Form I-9, United States includes all 50 states, which includes Washington, D.C., Guam, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Now, the 4 categories are, as you see listed on your screen, the first one being citizens of the United States. Okay, so who are citizens of the United States? Any person who was born, naturalized, or derived in the United States is considered a citizen of the United States. And then next you have non-citizen nationals of the United States. Now, this is typically people who are born in American Samoa, which includes Swain Islands or any place that owes allegiance to the U.S., but does not have certain rights like voting rights. Then we have what we call lawful permanent residents. And lastly, we have aliens that are authorized to work. And these are usually consist of like temporary people who have temporary status here, or either students, foreign students or whatever, who have temporary status. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about it as we go a little further down as well. Okay, now to comply with the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, you want to make sure the employers want to make sure they verify the identity and employment authorization documents of employees that you hire after November 6, 1986. Now remember that date. I want you to keep that date in your mind, November 6, 1986. Now you want to complete and retain a Form I-9 for each employee that you hire after that date. And again, that date is November 6, 1986. And most importantly, this is something we really want to emphasize, that employers must refrain from discriminating against individuals on the basis of their actual or their perceived national origin, citizenship, or their immigration status. And we're going to cover those categories as well too. And I'm going to also explain the different types of discrimination that we see and the most common ones that we see as well. Okay, now the anti-discrimination provisions of the INA prohibit 4 types of unlawful conduct, and they are as listed: citizenship and immigration status discrimination, and that's when you basically discriminate somebody because of their citizenship or their immigration status. National origin discrimination, again, it's simply said that you're discriminating against a person because of their national origin. Unfair documentary practices during the I-9 process. And then the last one is retaliation. Now, out of these 4, Bill, I'm going to ask the audience, here's another a quiz question. Out of these 4, which is the most common one that you think that we see on a regular basis? The number one practice that we see as far as that we see on a regular basis. Out of these 4, again, the first one is citizenship and immigration status discrimination. You have national origin discrimination. You have unfair documentary practices during the Form I-9 process. And then we have retaliation. So audience, please tell me, out of those 4, which one do you think is the most common one we see?
Retaliation.
So it looks like there is lots that are saying number 1 or number 2.
Mm-hmm. Number 1 and number so a lot of people are saying citizenship or immigration status discrimination, or they're leaning towards national origin discrimination. Is that correct, Bill?
That sounds like it. We got a couple of 3s in there as well, but it looks like 1s and 2s are the most popular.
1s and 2s are the most popular. Okay, well, the ones who got the number 3, you are correct. Unfair documentary practices during the Form I-9 process. That is the number 1, and I'll give you an example of exactly what that is. You have an employer who has a prospective employee who comes to work, and that employee comes, and what the employee does, they're going to go by the list of acceptable documents, which I will elaborate a little bit more as we go further. They are presented with the list of acceptable documents. From that list of acceptable documents, the employee gets to choose which documents from that list they are going to present to you, the employer. Here's where the unfair documentary practice comes into play. The employer on hand sits there and says, well, you know what? I don't like these documents that you give me. I want you to give me some other kind of documents. That is what we consider unfair documentary practice during the Form I-9 process. And that is the number 1 violation that we see when it comes to employers. It's the number 1 thing that gets employers in trouble, is that one right there. Because I want to reiterate again, and I'm going to emphasize this again as I go a little further down. When a prospective employee is coming to you, your responsibility as the employer, you are responsible to provide them with the list of acceptable documents, and also along with all the instructions that go along with the Form I-9. And I'll explain that as well too. But once you give them, the employee, the list of acceptable documents, it is the employee, not the employer. It's the employee who gets to choose which documents they want to present to you. And here's the most important aspect of that action. Once they present those documents to you, if those documents appear to be genuine and they seem to relate to that employee, you must accept those documents. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot tell an employee, well, you know what, I don't like this document, I want you to give me something else. You will, if you do, you are in violation of their rights. And again, you're going to get yourself in hot water. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that. Once you give the employee the list of acceptable documents, from that list of acceptable documents, the employee chooses which documents they're going to present to you. Once they present those documents to you, your responsibility is to look at those documents. And if those documents appear to be genuine and they seem to like they relate to that particular employee, then you must accept those documents. And I hope that that's perfectly clear, because I don't think I can explain it any clearer than that.
That's pretty clear.
All right. Now, on this slide here, what we wanted to bring to your attention is that we always get a lot of questions. Well, is there something in place where an employers always ask, is there something in place where we can call, or the employee can call, if they feel like that their rights have been violated? And the answer to that question is yes. It is called the Immigrant and Employee Rights Section, and they fall up under the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. And you see here, we wanted to bring the slide on it because there's two numbers here that we want you to pay attention to. The top one says where employees can contact IER, which is Immigrant Employee Rights. The employee can contact them regarding employment discrimination, or if they feel like their rights and responsibilities have been violated as well. Now, the number below that where it says employers may also contact IER anonymously, or you can identify yourself. That's your choice. But the reason why we want to have that number there is because a lot of times employer says, well, what about, as an employers, don't we have rights and don't we have things that we need to know about as well? You're absolutely right. You're correct on that. So you can contact IER, and they will be, because IER consists of a whole organization full of lawyers, and they can address a lot of your questions, especially when it comes to your responsibilities, your rights and responsibilities as an employer, the same way they can to advise employees on their rights and responsibilities as the employee as well. And they also have a very good section, what I was talking about earlier, as far as a section on their website they call the do's and don'ts. If you get a chance to go see it, please go check it out, because as an employer, trust me, there's a lot of questions that you might have that other employers have as well. And they've asked those questions and they've listed them with responses to those questions on their site. So if you get a chance, go check out their site as well. And we also do a webinar that a lot of employers like, even though it's not geared for employers. It's called the Employee Rights Webinar. And what it is, it's a webinar specifically for employees, but a lot of employers like to listen in on those webinars because they get a chance to hear a lot of questions and a lot of concerns or comments from the employee side of the house. So it helps them prepare for when they have to deal with processing their potential employees to their organization. So Bill, do we have any questions that you want to ask me before we move on?
Yeah, actually, there's a great one here from Nicole. She says, all right,
Okay.
So if they give documents and you don't like them, meaning they don't meet your review, doesn't that mean they've not passed identity verification? Which law applies here? State law, which says you have the right of refusal, or the governance of the form?
Okay, so now that's a good question. But again, we only go by as far as now, if your state has specific laws, you have to address that with your state legislation. But as far as when it comes to the federal government, what we go by, and our regulations are very simply clear cut. And for any employers who are enrolled in E-Verify, they read the memorandum of understanding and they understand exactly what our rules and what our regulations are. And ours states very simply, again, as the employer, your responsibility is to give the employee the list of acceptable documents. Now, again, here's the thing that protects you also, because a lot of employers say, well, if we don't thoroughly check out these documents or whatever, and if we hire somebody illegally, unintentionally, we could get in big trouble. Well, there's a law that protects employers from that specific situation. And what we do is it's called the good faith law. And what that basically means is that we don't expect you as employers to be document experts. I worked in Las Vegas for 4 years, and I worked in as a security personnel and was checking IDs constantly for 4 years, and I still missed some identification because some people are just really good at doctoring documents, and that's just the way it is. But what we're saying is that we don't expect you to be document experts. What we're simply saying is that if an employee comes to you and you give them the list of acceptable documents, and it clearly states that from the list of acceptable documents, it is the employee who gets to choose which documents they want to present. There's 3 categories on the list of acceptable documents. List A documents, which establishes both the identity and their work authorization. Then you have a list B documents, which establish their identity only, and list C documents, which establish only their work authorization only. So an employee can give you, from the list of acceptable documents, they can give you one list A document, which will establish both their identity and their work authorization, or they can give you a combination of a B and C documents, which the list B documents identifies their identity and list C their work authorization. So again, the employee has a choice. They look at the list of acceptable documents, and it clearly states all the documents that fall up on the list A, all the documents that fall up on the list B, all the documents that fall up on the list C. You give them that list of acceptable documents, and the employee chooses which documents they want to present. And again, your whole responsibility is just to look at those documents, and if they appear to be genuine, then you must accept them. Now, if the documents look doctored or altered or something, then at that point, yes, you do have the right. You can say, well, you know what? I can't read this information. I can't clearly see this information. Here's the list of acceptable documents. Can you please provide another document from this list of acceptable documents? But what you can't do is you can't sit there and say, you cannot tell an employee, well, you know what? I want you to give me this document right here. This is the one I want. I don't want any other documents. I want this one. That's what you cannot do. And I hope that clarifies it a little bit, Bill. And thank that individual for the question.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you, Nicole. And there's a few other great questions here. We'll hold off to the end, but there's one question that Debbie just asked. I know is on so many minds. With an I-9 form, if they choose, can they choose 2 from column A? Like, can they use a driver's license and a U.S. passport?
No, they only from list A documents, all they need to do is provide one document, because one document from the list A establishes both their identity and their work authorization. So all they need to do is just give you one document. If they choose to give you more than documents, again, you just accept those documents. You don't have to turn them away. You can accept it, but they're only required to give you one document from list A and a combination of one document from list B and list C.
Wonderful. All right, I'll save the rest of the questions for the end.
All right, thank you, Bill. Thank you. And again, thank you for your questions. I appreciate it so very much. Thank you. Okay. Now, again, this slide is basically just letting everybody know that as of May of 2020, you can use the Form I-9 verification, which is the new version, because we recently revised the Form I-9. So if you're using a Form I-9 that has a date that's different from that date, you see the date where it says October 21st, 2019, that's a revision date. If you have a Form I-9 that has a date that is older than that date, then you're using an outdated version of the Form I-9. So again, you can go to our I-9 Central site, which that link is right at the bottom. You can go to our I-9 Central site and you can click on the Form I-9, the updated version, and it'll pull up the updated version. And that is the version that everyone should be using right now, is the most updated version, which has that date of October 2019 on it. If you have a version of the Form I-9 that has a date that's older, then you're using the outdated version of the Form I-9. And we just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Now, we get a lot of questions about our list of acceptable documents. Well, JR, what does it look like? What does the list of acceptable documents look like? On the left there, you're getting a clear example of exactly what the list of acceptable documents looks like. And again, the other question we get is, do we have to give the employee the list of acceptable documents? Yes, because if you read through our instructions, you definitely have to make sure that the employee has access to the list of acceptable documents prior to filling out the Form I-9, not after you give them the Form I-9. Prior to the Form I-9, you want to make sure that you give them the list of acceptable documents and all the instructions. So now, Bill, here is probably my last test question. Well, I'm not going to say that because I love my little quiz question, so I'm not going to say it's the last one. But I'll try to make it my last one. I'm going to try to stick to it. But here's my last question. Okay, so on the list of acceptable documents, when it comes to fill out the Form I-9, okay? Now, the Form I-9 consists of 2 pages that you have to put written or information or required put in written information on. But here's my test question. How many total pages are there in the Form I-9? How many total pages are there in the Form I-9?
All right, I'm seeing total pages 3, 4. Oh, we got a 15. There we go. 15.
Now that includes instructions. So that includes the 2 forms, the 2 pages that you got to fill out, and all the instructions. How many total pages are there on the Form I-9?
All right, now we're back up to 15. Still got some 3s and 4s creeping in. 20. Amanda says 20. We got 7, 15, 18, 8. Yeah, all kinds of answers coming in. 9.
Oh, wow. Do we have any 2s or 3s?
We had lots of 2s and 3s in the beginning.
Okay, all right. Because that's usually the response that we get is 2 or 3 pages. But the correct answer is 15 pages.
Nice. We got some.
The correct
pros on
answer is
this
15
call.
pages. And here's the big bonus to that. And I want to make sure this is something I really want to make sure that I reemphasize heavy so that everybody understands. The answer to this question is yes. JR, do we have to make sure we give them all 15 pages? Yes, 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 and yes again. All 15 pages. You are required to make sure the employee has all 15 pages of the instructions, because an employee can come back and say, well, if they fill out something wrong or whatever, they can always come back and say, well, I didn't know that. But everything that in reference to the Form I-9, those 2 pages, that everything that's going there is covered under those 15 pages. That's why it's so important that they have to have access to all 15 pages. Now, here's the other question we get. Well, JR, if we give all of our employees all 15 pages, we're going to cut down a lot of trees. Do we have to give them like physically all 15 pages? Well, what about if we take the 15 pages, we put it into a binder, we make sure that we put it as part of our new employee packet, and we make sure they sit down, they read the instructions, and then they sign something at the end saying that they read all 15 pages. Does that meet the requirements? If that's your business practice, yes. But again, you have to make sure that they have access to all 15 pages of the Form I-9 instructions. I want to make that clear, which includes the list of acceptable documents. Yes. Okay. So I think that's pretty clear.
That was
so
pretty clear.
Now, as
yes,
you can
yes,
see,
yes.
and now as you can see on the list of acceptable documents, I told you about the 3 categories. You have list A, list B, and list C. And you can clearly see that all list A documents are listed there. All list B documents are listed there, and all list C documents are listed there. And again, when it comes to the employee has to give you one document from list A, which covers, because it tells you list A documents establishes both the identity and the employment authorization. So all they got to do is give you one document from list A, which will then establish both their identity and their employment authorization. Or they have to give you a combination of a list B and list C document, which will, because the list B documents establishes the identity and the list C establishes their authorization, their employment authorization. So again, give you one document from list A, which establishes both the identity and the employment authorization, or they have to give you a combination of a B and C document to establish both the identity and their employment authorization. And it's the employee who gets to choose which documents they want to present to you. And I wanted to just say that one more time, so they can't say that JR didn't say it quite a few times. All right, moving on. Now, you are not required to complete a Form I-9 for any of these categories. Anybody who works in a casual domestic service employees, working in a private household, or when the work is sporadic, irregular, or intermittent. Or if you're working, we have independent contractors for whom you do not set hours or provide tools to do the job. If they're getting their tools and their instructions from another entity, another organization, it is that organization's responsibility to have Form I-9s done for their particular employees. Or if you have any employees that are working outside of the United States. And again, the United States includes all 50 states, which includes the District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. Okay, so now this dives a little bit deeper to what I've already said, what I've already stated about the list of accepted documents. So I'm not going to continue to beat your brow down with it. But again, we just wanted to make sure you can see it up close and personal. So that's why we put this slide in so that you can see what we've already talked about. And it tells you everything I just told you before, but you get a chance to see it up close. And again, Bill can provide everybody a copy, or anybody who wants a copy of the presentation. You're more than welcome to have a copy of this presentation. And Bill, if anybody needs my email address, you can give it to them. If they have any questions after this presentation is over, they can contact me, or what they really do is contact our customer care operations, because they are on call all day long from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that number, for those of you who have a pen and want to write it down, is 888-464-4218. Again, that number is 888-464-4218. And that's our customer care service line. And they're there from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to answer any questions you might have about Form I-9 E-Verify. You can contact them, and they'll be more than happy to provide you with some assistance. Okay. Now, this is just kind of going into explain exactly where the employee, this is the employees section that they have to fill out. This is section 1. And this has to be completed by the employee by their first day of work for pay. And this is important to make sure that everybody remembers too, because we wanted to highlight certain things on this particular section. We get a lot of questions. We'll say, can somebody assist the person in filling out the Form I-9? Yes, somebody can assist them. And that person, whoever that person is, you see right below the section 1, where it says prepare and/or translator certification. That's where you're going to put that person's information right there. So if anybody assists the person with the Form I-9, they need to make sure that their information is put in that section right there. But what you don't want to do is you want to make sure that the employee signs where they're supposed to sign, and where the preparer who helped assisted them, make sure they sign where they're supposed to sign, and they don't get it backwards. There's a couple of things we highlighted in section 1 that we want to bring everybody's attention as well. When it comes to the Social Security number, the Social Security number and the email address is optional on the Form I-9, unless if the employer, if your agency or company is enrolled in E-Verify, then the Social Security number is required. It's required. So again, I want to say that the Social Security number is optional unless you're enrolled in E-Verify. If your company is enrolled in E-Verify, then the Social Security number is required. The email address is also optional. But again, if you're enrolled in E-Verify, E-Verify likes to have the email addresses, because what they do is by having their email address, E-Verify can then provide updates to the employee as far as what their files are concerned, or whatever is with their cases. They can provide them with updates. That's why it's important to have the email address. But again, the Social Security number and the email address is optional unless you're enrolled in E-Verify. If your company's enrolled in E-Verify, it's mandatory. Now, signature, we get a lot of questions about this a lot too. JR, what happens if we have somebody who signs outside of the signature block? Does that void the Form I-9? The answer to that question is no. Of course, we would like everybody to sign within the boundaries of the signature block. But if an individual signs outside the lines, that does not void the contract. The only time void the Form I-9, the only time it becomes an issue is if for some reason they put information where it's blocking vital information that you cannot see or you cannot read. That's a different situation. Then you can just ask them, could you please fill out a new form, because we can't read the information here. It's blocking certain information and we can't see the information. But just because they go outside the boundaries does not null and void the Form I-9. Now, you also see on this form, you can see if you look in each field, there's a little blue circle with a question mark. I think everybody can see it. Those are called helper text. So when you go on the form, when you go pull up the Form I-9 on your screen, you're going to see that. If you pull up it on your computer, you're going to see those little blue circles with a question mark. And the reason why they're there is this is a new feature. So as an employer, if you have a question about a particular field, you can click on that little blue circle with a question mark. So say like where it says other names used in that block, up in the right hand corner, it says other names used. If you have a question about what they mean by other names used, you click on that little blue circle with a question mark, and it'll give you an explanation of what they're looking for, what they require in that particular field or that particular block. And some of those blocks actually give you some examples of exactly what it looks like, what they want you to require to put in those areas as well. Now, you're only going to see these little blue circles with the question mark when you're pulling up the Form I-9 on your computer. If you go to print out the Form I-9, if you print it out, you're no longer going to see those blue circles with the question mark. You're only going to see them as if you have it pulled up on your computer. But once you go to print it out, you're going to just see the blank field with just that information, but you're not going to see that little circle with the question mark. Now, here's another question we get that a lot of times they say, JR, what is this QR code block over on the right-hand side in the middle of the page? What is that? Because a lot of times we get a lot of complaints from employers that employees, when they're sitting down filling out the form, they will draw or write little markings and stuff, draw pictures of their family or whatever in that block. And they give the form back, say, you know, you got to redo it. You got to fill out a different form. So to answer that question is, if somebody decides to doodle or write some stuff in that little block, that it does not null and void the form. The form is still good. Again, like I said, as long as you can visibly see the vital information, the form is still valid, it's still good. And there's no functionality has been established for that block as of yet anyway, so they're not hurting anything, even if they did write something in there, as long as it's not derogatory or something. But I'm just saying it's not going to hurt anything, because we get a lot of questions about that particular block. Okay, moving on. All right, so now section 2. This is your part as the employer. This is your section. This section needs to be completed by the 3rd day. The 3rd business, notice that we said the 3rd business day, because we get a lot of questions. Well, JR, does Saturday and Sunday count? No, Saturday and Sunday does not count. We're talking about 3 business days, okay? And a holiday does not count as a business day either. So we get a lot of questions about that too. So we're talking about 3 business days. So by the 3rd business day is when you, the employer, have to have your section of the Form I-9 completed and filled out. Now, we want your responsibility is to examine this document, and you want to make sure that they submit all original, unexpired documents in the presence of you by the employer. They must be filled out, and they must sign and date. You must sign and date your portion on the Form I-9. Now, again, you can authorize somebody, or you can delegate somebody to act in your capacity. But we want to make sure that as the employer, you understand that even if you designate somebody to oversee or to complete your Form I-9, you're still going to be held responsible for any errors or mistakes that are on that Form I-9. So if you get audited and there's any errors on that Form I-9, you're still going to be held responsible for that. So we want to make sure that all the employers, that you understand that, and that we clearly state that so that you understand that as well too. And just to answer the next question that's going to come on after that, because we get a lot of questions when I do my presentation with JR, when are we going to get inspected? I have no idea. Most of the time they're random, they're unannounced inspections, and as long they can contact you at any time. But the only thing that they have to do is that they have to give you 3 days to produce the documents, your Form I-9. So you have 3 days. So if an inspector contacts you, they're not going to say, I'm going to be there tomorrow morning, first thing tomorrow morning. They have to give you 3 days to be able to produce those Form I-9s and to produce your Form I-9s if you are to be getting inspected. So I hope that information helps. So Bill, do we have any other questions real quick before we go? Or are you going to wait until the end?
Yeah, we got a lot of great questions. I think we can wait for the end on these though.
Outstanding. Okay. All right. Let's keep moving. Okay. Now this is just covering our temporary policy that we have in place, especially for our List B identity documents. And it just tells you that basically on May 1st, List B documents are set to expire on March of 2020 and not otherwise extended by the authority. But they did recently extend again. So it goes until the end of August now. So basically because of the COVID-19, we have a thing in place now where it's just letting you know that when your employee provides List B document not extended by the issuing authority, you want to record the document information in section 2 under List B. You want to enter the word COVID-19 in the additional field information block. Again, you want to enter that because during COVID-19, you're going to enter the word COVID-19 in the additional information field. Within 90 days after we here at Department of Homeland Security, we terminate the temporary policy that's currently in place, then you will be required to present, your employer will be required to present a valid, unexpired document to replace their expired document in your presence when they were initially hired. And you want to make sure, and whatever you do, when you date, please do not backdate. Please do not backdate. so that when it comes time for you to re-verify your forms or to verify your forms after the COVID thing that's been down and they've kind of lifted that off. After that time period, whatever that actual date is that you're going to review that stuff, you want to put that date. You do not want to backdate and say, "Oh, I reviewed these forms back in 4 months ago," because you didn't. You want to put the date that you're actually going through to do your process. Once the COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted, then you want to go and put the actual date of that you're going to actually verify all of your Form I-9s. So please make sure that your HR personnel, make sure that they understand that as well. Please do not backdate. The inspectors, it drives them crazy when people backdate the information. It really does. And so it's just not worth it. Please don't do it. This is just the more information that's just continued as far as about the extension of the documents. And it tells you that the employees list B document expired on so-and-so 2020. Again, the issuing authority has extended the document expiration date due to COVID-19, which everybody knows. And again, you can go to our I-9 Central site and it will state that. It'll tell you, and it'll also tell you, if you keep checking it too, it'll tell you when that extension is going to expire. And it'll let you know once it does expire, there will be a big message out on I-9 Central that says the extension for the COVID-19 procedures have expired. So that you will get notification of that as well too. Because that's the other question we get is, will we get notification once the extension has expired? Yes, you will. But again, we also require the employees to please check our I-9 Central periodically to check to see for updates, because it usually on a weekly basis, they provide updates about the current COVID-19 policies that are in place right now. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's very lengthy, but basically what it's just telling you again, it says that within 3 business days of resuming your normal operations, that is when you're going to physically inspect documents with your employee present at the time, because they're doing everything remotely now. But once it goes down and they pull the restrictions, then at that time you'll have 3 days to resume normal operations, and that is when you will start to physically inspect your documents with your employees present at that time. Again, now I reiterated this earlier, and when it comes to examining documents, we really want to emphasize this because I think a lot of times employers, they really get so wrapped up in this and they get too wrapped up. So they go too far down deep in the woods for me. So what we're saying is that we do not expect you to be document experts. We don't. Your responsibility as the employer is just to, when the documents are presented to you, you look at those documents, you examine the documents. And if the documents appear to be genuine and they appear to genuinely relate to the person who's presenting them, you accept those documents. And again, you're only going to accept the documents, they must be originals. Photocopies are not acceptable. The only exception where a photocopy is acceptable is a certified, I repeat, a certified copy of a birth certificate. Now, this is another thing we get. Well, JR, what happens if we get if an employee comes and they say that they've lost a document? Again, and it's telling you right here, a receipt showing that your employee has applied to replace a document that was lost, stolen, or damaged. I repeat, a receipt showing that your employee has applied to replace a document that was lost, stolen, or damaged. And it must fall into one of those 3 categories. The document had to have been lost, it had to have been stolen, or it was damaged. Now, the receipt must be issued by the originating agency. The employee, I repeat, the employee must present original replacement documents or other acceptable documents within 90 days of their hire date. Receipts are never acceptable if employment is less than 3 business days. And again, you can go to I-9 Central. There's a great section they have called Acceptable Documents and Receipts. Please click on it, check out that information, because it gives you a wealth of information about what are acceptable documents and acceptable receipts. Now, this is another big one that we get. JR, are we allowed to make copies of our documentation, our paperwork? If that's your business practice, that's fine. But the only caveat that we say to that is, and this is the golden rule when it comes to copies, if you make copies for one, you must do so for all. What gets employers in troubles is when they start making copies for certain individuals, but not other individuals. That's what makes inspectors freak out and say, well, can you explain to me, why did you make copies of these for these individuals, but not these individuals? The golden rule is if your company's business practices that you make copies of all your Form I-9s, then make copies of all your Form I-9s, and you're good to go. So if you do one, you make copies for one, do it for all. Be consistent on all your documentation, please. Now, when it comes to re-verification, it just simply tells you that your employers must re-verify an employee using the Form I-9 Section 3 if their temporary employment authorization or temporary employment authorization documents have expired. Now, you can also use Section 3 if you, the employer, if you rehire your employee within 3 years of the date that you first completed their original Form I-9, or you update the employee's biographical information. So let's say you got an employee who recently got married, had a name change. Are you required to update that in Section 3? No. But if you want to, again, you can update it in Section 3, make that note in Section 3, and please take it and attach it to the original documentation for that employee. Please. Now, the new Form I-9s also come with another feature that comes in handy as well, too. The old Form I-9, it had 2 pages, the first page and the second page. But the second page, sometimes the first page and second page would get separated, and then the employers didn't know whose first page, whose second page went with what. Well, the new Form I-9 or the revised Form I-9 now has where you have to have the information for the employer on both the first page and the second page. So it makes it easier for you to be able to identify those documents and keep them together. So you do want to keep them together. If you do create a new Form I-9, or if you have to create a new Form I-9, you still want to take that new Form I-9 and attach it to the original Form I-9 and file it and keep it in your records. Okay, now, and these are just some tips as far as when it comes to re-verification. You should re-verify an employment authorization document, which is an I-766 with an expiration date on it, a Form I-94 with a temporary I-551 stamp, any unexpired foreign passport with a temporary I-551 stamp, or an expired permanent resident card presented with a Form I-797. Now, you do not re-verify. This is important. You do not re-verify U.S. citizens and non-citizen nationals. You do not re-verify U.S. passports or passport cards. You do not re-verify permanent residents who present an unexpired permanent resident or an alien registration receipt card. And you do not re-verify any List B documents because, again, once they establish their identity is established, it doesn't go away. Okay, this is one of probably the second biggest thing that we get issues on when it comes to Form I-9 from employers and a lot of HR personnel. They say, JR, how do we go about correcting mistakes that we make on a Form I-9? Here it is right here in front of you. If you discover that you made a mistake on a Form I-9, you can correct the existing Form I-9, or you can create a new Form I-9 if you so choose. Now, if you choose to correct the existing Form I-9, all you simply do is you line out. Notice I said a line. I didn't say multiple lines or 10, 15 lines. I said you just simply make a line across the incorrect portion. You enter the correct information, and then you initial and date your correction. If you do a new Form I-9, again, like I stated earlier, you want to keep that old Form I-9 with the new Form I-9. And you should also, this is just something to cover yourself. Anytime you have to make any corrections on a Form I-9, this is sort of like a CYA thing. Anytime you got to make a correction on a Form I-9, you also want to do a short memorandum, and you want to, because you basically want to do a memorandum stating what your actions were, what your corrective actions were. And you want to attach that to the Form I-9. So when you get your inspection, when the inspector comes by and looks and they see and they look and they'll say, well, wait a minute, why did they make a correction? And then there's that little memorandum that says, oh, okay, I see. It explains exactly why you had to make the corrections. It keeps you out of hot water. So we just highly recommend that if you do make corrections, attach a little memo, and it can be handwritten, it can be typed, doesn't matter. Just attach it with the Form I-9 and keep it with their records. For missing forms, if you discover that you're missing Form I-9s for an employee, you want to give the employee the current version of the form, and when we say the current version, the most up-to-date version of the Form I-9. You want to have them complete the Form I-9 as soon as possible. But again, like I stated earlier, please, whatever you do, once they complete the Form I-9, they're going to put the actual date that they completed the Form I-9. Do not backdate the Form I-9. You want to take you want to attach the signed and dated explanation of your corrective actions, attach it to the Form I-9, and file it, and you're good to go. Now, the other question, if the employee wants us to provide a copy of their paperwork, can we do that? Yes. If that's your business practice, yes, you can do that. But again, if you do it for one, remember, you do it for all. Now, when it comes to storage of the Form I-9, you must have a Form I-9 on file for all current employees, which we established. When you store your Form I-9s, they can be secured in any way that meets your business needs. You can store your Form I-9s on site, at an off-site facility, or in a storage facility. That's you, whatever your business practice is. But again, you want to be consistent with your Form I-9s. And the most important thing, wherever you store your Form I-9s, privacy is the most important thing. You want to protect people's privacies at all times. So your Form I-9s should be on a need-to-know basis. You don't want to make sure that everybody has access to your Form I-9s. You store your copy of documents Form I-9 with your employees' records. You want to ensure that only authorized personnel have access to your Form I-9s, again, on a need-to-know basis, and you want to make them available within 3 days of an official request for an inspection. Again, you'll have 3 days to make your Form I-9s available. Now, this here is just providing like a little, when we get questions like, well, JR, how long are we supposed to hold on to our Form I-9s? We've given you a little bit, a little example, a little good and regular example exactly how long you should store your Form I-9s. So you see here where it says that John Smith, he was hired on November 1st, 2019. Now, John was terminated on May 5th, 2020. John worked less than 2 years, so you kept his form on now for 3 years. Now, you see what they say is you're going to take John's hire date and you're going to take his termination date. On his hire date, you're going to add 3 years to that date. On his termination date, you're going to add a year to that date because it tells you if they work less than 2 years, you're going to retain their form for 3 years after the date that you entered the first day of employment. Or if they work more than 2 years, you're going to retain the form for 1 year after the date they stop working. So their termination date, you're going to add a year to that date. And whichever date, when they started working date, you add 3 years, and when they end date, you're going to add a year to that date. Whichever is the latter date, that's your retention date. And again, there's a nice, good formula for that on the I-9 Central. There's also another good thing that I didn't mention earlier that I want to make sure I mention now, and it's called you can go on our I-9 Central site and you can type it in. It's called the M-274 Handbook for Employers. Again, it's the M-274 Handbook for Employers. If you get a chance, download a copy of it, keep it on your desk as reference because that M-274 is sort of like our little Bible. It has all the information as far as about the Form I-9, how to fill out all the sections. It has a nice section there as far as identifications, what different identifications look like, what a permanent resident card looks like, and so on. It has all that information there. So if you get a chance, please. It's called the M-274 Handbook for Employers. If you don't have a copy, get a copy near you. And it's free. Doesn't cost a dime. And by the way, our presentations don't cost anything either, because that's another question we get. Well, JR, how much does it cost to get you guys to come to a presentation? We at the federal government, we don't charge anything. We don't charge. There's no fees involved. So if somebody calling from the government saying that, oh, we'll do it for my nine, but it's going to cost you, it's not us because we don't charge anything. Only thing I charge is your time, your precious time, and your smiling faces. All right, let's move on. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the Form I-9 and E-Verify and exactly how they work in conjunction with each other. Okay. So the question we get, what exactly is E-Verify? E-Verify is a web-based service that is fast and very easy to use. It electronically verifies the employment eligibility of your newly hired employees and existing employees that are assigned to work on a qualifying federal contract. The E-Verify system itself is a database it's a partnership database that was created by us, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Social Security Administration. So basically, the information that you provide on the Form I-9, that information is going to go into two databases: the Department of Homeland Security database and the Social Security Administration database. That's where that information goes. Now, basically, the E-Verify goals is to reduce unauthorized employment, minimize verification-related discrimination at all levels, to be quick and non-burdensome to all employers, and most importantly, to protect the civil liberties and employee privacies at all times. How does E-Verify work? Simply put, the information from your Form I-9, because you can see on the picture here, you have the employer who's sitting there with the information from Form I-9. They're going to input that information that's on the Form I-9, they're going to input it into the E-Verify database system. And again, within 3 to 5 seconds, you're going to get one of those 3 responses that you see at the bottom: employment authorized, tentative non-confirmation, verification in process. So what does those 3 things mean? Once you put the information in E-Verify, if it comes back and it says employment authorized, get a green check and it says employment authorized. What that means is that the information was inputted into the 2 databases. It came back and they found that that particular employee was authorized to work in the United States. End of discussion. You can then go in the E-Verify system. You can close the case. Or you're going to get what we call a tentative non-confirmation. And a tentative non-confirmation, simply put, is where something happens, something has come up where more time is required to resolve the issue. I want to reiterate this. Just because an employer gets a tentative non-confirmation on an employee, it does not mean that that employee is not authorized to work in the United States. I want to say that again, because this is the problem that a lot of employers make. They'll get a tentative non-confirmation and they'll go and terminate the employee. The employee will then go to IER and complain. IER will come back and say, why did you terminate him? Well, we got a tentative non-confirmation. A tentative non-confirmation means that you just need more time. There's more time that needs to try to resolve the issue because something has happened. It could be a number of things that might have happened to cause a tentative non-confirmation. And it could be that the information wasn't inputted in the system correctly. Some of the information might not be accurate or up to date. There's certain circumstances that could easily bring back a tentative non-confirmation response. And again, just because they get a tentative non-confirmation does not mean that the employee is not authorized to work in the United States. It just means that there's more time needed to resolve the issue or to address the issue and resolve it. Now, what is a verification in process? That means when it comes back, that means that the verification is still going through the process, is still in motion, still going through the process. And again, more time is needed. Usually when you get a verification in process, usually within 24, 48 hours, you'll get another response after that stating if it's still in process or if it's completed or whatnot. You should get a response within 24 to 48 hours. Now, I spoke earlier about all the resources that we have available when it comes to Form I-9 and E-Verify. These are just some examples of what we have. And again, I told you about the I-9 Central, and it lists everything that the I-9 Central that it has on the I-9 Central site. It has a revised table of changes. It has our I-9 Central is also available in Spanish. It has our different information for our forms, up-to-date receipt guidance so any receipt information comes out or any guidance on receipts, it has up-to-date information on that. I spoke earlier about that M274 handbook for employers. Again, if you don't have it, download a copy, keep it up, bookmark it. You'll be very happy that you did. Trust me, you'll be very happy that you did. It also has information about our webinars and what we have our demand on webinars as well. Our I-9, Form I-9 on demand, and also our vignettes. A lot of people say, well, what exactly are vignettes? The vignettes our Form I-9 vignettes are basically, they're like little small movie clips. So, and we have a vignette for each section of the Form I-9, section 1, section 2, and section 3. So you can click on Form I-9 vignette section 1, vignette 1, and it'll have a little 5-minute information on how to complete section 1. Same thing with section 2, section 3. And they're available on our I-9 Central site. We already spoke about the COVID thing, so I'm not going to hit on that again. This slide just basically says the same thing that we talked about earlier. Same thing here. It's the exact same thing. Okay. Now, this is another thing that kind of gets employers in trouble that we need to make sure that everybody's aware of, and to make sure that all employers know exactly what it is. So for those of you who don't know, there's a new program that we came out with a couple years called MyE-Verify. And for some of you, you will remember it before we named it MyE-Verify. It used to be called Self-Check. Okay, and basically what Self-Check or what MyE-Verify is is a program that was basically created for the employees, for the employee. It's where the employee can go and basically learn about all their rights and responsibilities of the employee, and they can also go and they can also create a MyE-Verify account. In this MyE-Verify account, this is something they can do before they go to you, the employer. They can go to MyE-Verify, they can run a check on themselves to basically see if their information is good before they come to the employer. Here's the caveat to the MyE-Verify thing though. A lot of employers know about the MyE-Verify program. And what the employers will do, they'll tell the employee, well, here, this is what we want you to do. We want you to go to MyE-Verify. We want you to run a check on yourself before you come to us. That's a no-no. Again, MyE-Verify is voluntary. It's not mandatory. So an employer cannot tell an employee that you have to go through MyE-Verify first before you come to us. That you cannot do. Because again, like I said, MyE-Verify is a voluntary program that is there for the employees to be able to check and go through and do sort of like a self-check on themselves prior to going to an employer. They can establish their own account with their own username and password, and it gives them information about their, as far as about their rights and responsibilities. And they can also go and use a feature called self-lock, which is available in MyE-Verify. And self-lock basically allows that employee to go in and they can put their social security number in there, but they can put a lock on their social security number so that nobody else can get access to their social security number in the MyE-Verify system, and nobody else can try to use their social security number to get a job. Again, MyE-Verify is a voluntary program, not mandatory, and you cannot make an employee use MyE-Verify. Because we get that question a lot. These are something we just want to bring to your attention as far as about the services that we offer here within our organization here, as far as when it comes to MyE-Verify. We can do what we call public webinars, or you can do what we call a customized session where you request a speaker. Or if you're doing a live event, you request us to come speak at your event. We're available for that too as well. The topics that we cover for the most part is Form I-9 overview, E-Verify overview. We do E-Verify for existing users, and we also do employee rights and MyE-Verify. If you want to use our logo on your websites, then you have to just, of course, you have to seek approval for that, and that link is a live link. You can click on that link, it'll give you information, or you can just go to our website, E-Verify website, and it'll give you information on how you need, if you want to use our logo, that you can, but you have to get approval to do that. These are just some things about us that we just wanted to bring to your attention. It's kind of like fluff stuff, you know, we pat ourselves on the back a little bit. If you can't pat yourself on your back, then who can, right? Okay, so it just basically let us know that we received the highest rating for customer service of all the federal agencies in the American Customer Service Survey for Form I-9, E-Verify, and also we provide information for our employer and employee hotline. And remember, I gave you the employer hotline number earlier, but in case you missed it, there it is for you. Again, that's 888-464-4218. And their hours of operation are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Standard Time. So if you got any comments about our webinars or about our sessions, or if you need more, you just need more training, you're more than welcome. You can send your request to the link that's provided here, which is E-Verify outreach at uscis.dhs.gov. Please include the date that you would like to have the sessions, the time, and also the topic of the webinar. Or if you have a specific speaker that you want to have give your presentation, just include all that information and submit the request. Somebody will get back to you pretty quickly, and they will call you and say which dates work for you, and then they'll coordinate the dates. And we'll definitely do our best to accommodate you in whatever fashion we can. With that being said, that is the end of our slide presentation. So, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir. And I'm sorry if I went over. I didn't mean to. I tried to get it as fast as I could. I hope I wasn't too loud. So I'm at your beck and call, sir.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for the detailed information. So we're going to open it up for Q&A for anybody who wants to hang out with us. Thank you to the nearly 300 notaries from around the country that were here for that. Yeah, Harry, you
guys
you
are
the
popular,
headline
man. You guys are popular. Wow.
Yeah, so, and here's the thing I want to talk about real quick before we move into the questions is you notice on those forms, guys, you notice what was missing, right? Because we saw some people commenting in it. What we don't do is we don't seal it. We don't stamp this. We're not acting in the capacity as a notary public when we do this.
That's correct.
That's a real important distinguisher for us, right? We're wearing a different hat right now. And we saw some questions in there about why, how does this tie into the notary stuff? Well, I invite you to take a bigger outlook on the role that you play in this business of service that you're building. You are a credentialed professional. So while we have built a business on being a notary public, there are other industries and in this case, employers that find value in us having credentials as a notary public. That comes with a certain amount of integrity associated with it, professionalism, and they will hire us to act as the independent representative for these employers. And we're oftentimes hired by the employer directly, which is usually how I get it. They'll contact me after a Google search. And they'll just say, hey, here's my situation. Can you help me out with this? And they'll pay. I've been compensated anywhere from $50 to $100 to do that. Then sometimes through our current signing companies, we'll get these I-9 verifications that pay significantly less than that too. But there is definitely a market, especially with so many at-home employees now. We're seeing more and more and more of this. So that's kind of preface for the rest of these questions. Okay, Harry, because I think that might help answer some of them, but we've got lots of great questions. Harry, do we have you for a few more minutes?
Just for a few more minutes. Yeah, I have a meeting I have to go to, but yeah, for about 5 minutes, so I'm good.
Okay, excellent. So let's jump in here. Sharon asked, if we are hired as a third-party representative of an employer, do we have to keep the records?
No. Okay. So and that what you're referring to there, we call that an employer agent. So that's basically what that term is. So if a company hires you basically to oversee their Form I-9s for their personnel, that again, like I stated, that company, even though they hired you, that company is still, that original company is still responsible for the overseeing of those Form I-9s. So any errors or any mistakes will fall on that company, not you, but that company. He hired you because they hire you to provide a service. Now they can rate you on your services. They can rate you on that. But if inspector comes, the inspector's not going to hold you responsible. The inspector's going to hold the employer, whoever hired you, for any errors or any mistakes on that Form I-9.
Beautiful. And along those same lines, can the employee actually find us and hire us to assist with the form as well?
Well, as far as that's your business practice. Now we don't get into that. That's not our lane. We don't get into that at all. We don't say who can hire somebody, who can't. That's a total different area. Now you can contact IER, Immigrant Employee Rights Section, and you can ask them that question and they can answer that question, but we don't get into the legality parts of that. That is definitely out of our lane.
Beautiful. All right. And I thought Lorraine had a really great question here. Can these forms I-9 be signed electronically via remote online notarization, even without the notarization, basically via video call or anything like that?
Yeah, right now, while they got the current COVID-19, if it's a remote location, if it falls under a remote location, then if it's a remote location, then those forms you can basically get those forms, they can sign them and they can scan them and send them to you. That's fine. But again, no matter where they are, where they're being signed, right now they're not enforcing, as far as normally with the procedures, you have to actually have somebody physically watching the person sign those Form I-9s, right? While COVID-19 is going on right now, that's not in place. Once those COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, then you, the employer, will be responsible for getting that employee to visually watch an employee or watch them sign those particular forms. So right now they can be done that way remotely, but that's only while those remote policies are in place. Once those restrictions are lifted, remember you said you have 3 days to have the employees come in and actually sign and complete those Form I-9s.
Bill, could I say something really quick?
Please.
I do a lot of these, and my advice to notaries is Google the paragraph that says that no notary is permitted to put their seal or stamp on the document, laminate it, put it in your bag, or put it in your office and carry it with you, because they will come in or come to you or meet you and be extremely upset that you are not putting your stamp or seal on the document. And by having that with you, that's all you need. You can say, well, I get asked this question all the time. Here's Wikipedia or whatever site you go to, NNA, whatever, we're not allowed to do it. So it's just a suggestion that if you're going to drive a half hour and meet someone, be prepared with that one paragraph. And I think that you will be very glad you did.
Yeah, that's because that's part of the misconceptions of the public, and even sometimes the employers or who's ever hiring you for the company, they think it's supposed to be notarized.
That's right, they do.
But it's not. Yeah,
And even
love that.
you tell them, they're like, well, you have to do it. So just take that piece of paper, get it laminated, put it in your bag, and when you have to whip it out, just say, this is right straight from wherever.
Love it, Judy. Thank you so much. Speaking of lamination, Harry, are laminated Social Security cards acceptable in the eyes of your department?
Yes, we get a lot of questions about laminating documents. And again, the key thing was that if they laminate documents, again, as long as it doesn't block the vital information on the documents, sometimes people will laminate, they'll punch holes in them and they'll punch out a portion of the information you can't see. Once they do that, then that voids out the document. As long as they can see all the vital information on that document, if they want to laminate the document, they can.
Wonderful. Let me see if we've got any other questions that are specifically for you, Harry.
Yeah, and I know one question they're going to ask. They're going to say, is this the real Denzel Washington? No, I'm not really Denzel Washington.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. That about wipes out all our questions with that one. Okay, so there's two more questions here.
Okay.
If an employee walks into an appointment with us after we've been hired, they only have the 3 main pages that have the forms, but there's 12 pages missing of the instructions.
You mean the 3 sections? You mean they have the 3 sections? They have the 2 pages with the 3 sections, section 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
Yep. But they did not bring the other 12 pages to the appointment, the instructions. What's our responsibility there?
As far as on the employee or the employees?
Well, so we're acting as the agent.
Okay, so you're saying if an employee comes in, if an employee or the employers come and they don't have all the, they have just the 3 pages, the 2 pages, but they don't have the instructions, what needs to be done?
The employee. So if the employee seeks you out, shows up to the appointment, and they've left the instructions somewhere else and only have the first 3 pages, how do you handle
the
that?
employer? I would behoove whoever is acting in that capacity to print out those instructions and give them those instructions, because again, like I said, the instructions are not cloudy. The instructions are very clear. You are required to make sure that the employees have access and have everything, which includes the instructions, prior to completing the Form I-9. So if they come there and they don't have those instructions, print them out, give them those instructions, let them read them, make sure they understand and state that they understand them, and keep it moving.
Got it. And just for clarification, the notary who's acting as the agent is not required to keep a copy of that I-9. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
All right, Harry, I know
but if that notary does make a copy, if they make copies for some and not others, then it would behoove the employer to sit there and point out to them, if you're going to make copies, could you please make copies for everybody? Please.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead.
I just have one question for you that has always confused me. Sometimes they want me to sign something that says they made me their authorized representative of the company. And that makes me feel uncomfortable. I like to use the words notary public. Do I have to use the words authorized representative of the company? Or can I just put, you know how you put last name, first name, and then notary public?
Yes, like I said, we get this question a lot as far as people, like there's a lot of entities that want to have somebody sign something, say, yes, you signing that you are authorized agent. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to push the responsibility over onto you. Again, they can do that all day long, but it's not going to change anything, because the policy clearly states that you can authorize whoever you want, you can delegate whoever you want, but you're still going to be responsible for those any corrections or any errors on that Form I-9. That protects you. So you can sign it, but it's not going to make a difference. They're still going to be held responsible.
Thank you. Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you.
Anytime.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Harry. There's probably a couple more questions that are going to roll in. I have some money questions that were going to come in that we can answer, but if I know you have a meeting, would you like to get off of here?
Yes, because I have to go to another, but I just wanted to, again, I want to thank Judy. I want to thank you. I enjoy this. I hope that you guys will call me back. Anytime you need me, you contact me and let me know. I love this. I love you guys, your organization. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. On behalf of my entire division, the Department of Homeland Security, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, thank you. And please, everybody stay safe. And I look forward to seeing all of you physically in person soon.
Thank you, Harry, and thank you for being there, and thank you for coming today, and it was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Harry.
And thanks for doing a great job, Bill. Great job, Bill.
All right. Thank you so much. Guys, if you want to hang out with us for a few more minutes, we're going to still do that. Harry has to jump off here. But I think, Judy, if you have a minute, we can address some of the questions about who hires us, the kind of money that we can make, those types of things. Also, I just want to clarify, because there is some confusion about the licensing and things like that's required. To the best of my knowledge, California is the only state that has decided that I-9s fall under immigration documents, and you cannot assist with immigration documents without being trained, registered, and bonded as an immigration consultant in California. So if you are in California, you can absolutely help out with I-9s. There's just some extra steps that you have to take to get yourself registered and bonded to do so. And the National Notary Association does have an immigration consultant course. I think it's like $180. I've heard great things. You just need to get through that. And then little trainings like this will help you perform the duties even better. And then it opens up a whole other lots of other things that you can do with that. For the rest of us that are not in California, we can proceed as normal like this. And how we get hired is just like I said, people are going to be, they literally search I-9 notary on Google. And if you optimize your website to find those people, and maybe if you get permission to use the E-Verify logo from the department, you might be able to include that stuff on your website too. That would just drive more traffic to you. These also come through the normal signing companies. I can't remember, is it Coast to Coast, or what was the other company that, there's another company that does a lot of these I-9s anyway. Judy, what else do you have to say as far as what people pay you to help them out with this I-9?
I usually get between $40 and $50. There are a lot of notaries that are, and that's why I suggested this to Bill, because there are a lot of notaries that have a lot of questions and are reticent about doing them. So like in my area, they usually come to me and say, well, I've called 15 people. I'm so happy that you're there. And again, I would check around and see what the market bears wherever you are. And once you know what you're doing, now he didn't touch on something that I will. A lot of the larger companies like AstraZeneca and large companies are doing this remotely. And when I say remotely, not using Run, but they send you a link and a password and a link that you click on. And then you go in there and you put your information and a little bit of the client's information. And then it asks you like, it asks you, is it a passport or what is it? And you click on the right one and what's the number. And honest to goodness, it doesn't even take 5 minutes. So that is becoming more and more prevalent, or I see it all the time now. And, what I think, and I could be wrong, but like I've been getting a lot of work from one particular company. I think if you do a good job, that they just keep you and they keep sending the work back to you. So it's like being a signing agent or an apostille agent. It's like everything else. You have to seek it out. And if you have SEO and you have keyword searches and you want to do this kind of work, then put it in there, so that when people go I-9 near me, you come up.
Yeah, that's really the key. This is just another revenue stream for you. But this is it's like like pretty much anything. We're going to use search engine optimization. If you haven't bought into the idea of needing search engine optimization, I encourage you to implement that now. The best time to do it was 20 years ago. The second best time is today with your search engine optimization. You can start adding those keywords in, but here's the other side of it too, is the relationships. Just like Judy said, there are companies that only hire remote workers. There's so much of that now. There's these consolidated HR companies that help other smaller companies hire on their staff, and they need us as credentialed professionals to help them out with that and physically inspect the IDs and have some sort of integrity, have some sort of professionalism, know that we're not going to show up in dress or sweatpants or holy jeans. That's in their head when they hear Notary Public. That's why they're hiring us for roles like this, because we have that air of responsibility and professionalism to us.
But I do want to say, I want to repeat something I said before. Your biggest problem, because learning it is simple. It's not rocket science. Your biggest problem is going to be that they want you to use the stamp and seal, and I'm not trying to be funny. They cannot understand why. I had one, and she called her boss, and her boss said, well, I've had 1,000 notaries that use the stamp and seal. And I said, okay, well then take one of them, but I'm not going to do that. And then later on, they called me to apologize. But you have to be very strict, and you can't let them bully you into it. And you can't think, well, just today I'll just put the stamp on, or I'll put the stamp on the back of the page or something. Don't do it, because the law backs you up. You are not permitted to do it. It is a Homeland Security document. It's just like a naturalization certificate. You wouldn't put your stamp or seal on a naturalization certificate, and you can't put your stamp or seal on this one. And I'm going to tell you, when a college or a school or somebody finds out that you know your stuff, they will keep coming back to you with work. It happens around here all the time. That's all. I'm not trying to be funny. That's going to be your biggest problem.
I'll tell you right now, guys, if you are wondering what you can write about in social media or on your blog, making a blog about this, why notarizing an I-9 is not permitted, or the perspective of just the misconception of consumers and even employers and what the reality is, that's something you can write about that will be on your blog forever. And it will, if you do it with the keywords, then it will drive traffic to your website. It's part of the cycle of this. And again, if you haven't bought into content marketing yet, this is the next level stuff, guys, is having content on your website that makes that has to do with what people are looking for and that gives value to them. Is just going to drive more and more traffic. You are going to become the go-to notary in your city when you do this. We have 2 hands up, Judy. So if it's all right with you, I'd love to skip over to Notary to Go from Lake Havasu.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I missed you while Harry was here.
Oh, no, that's okay. My question is about, since we do not notarize the document, is this covered under our E&O insurance, since like the loan signing agency is covered, notarization is covered, but since we're not notarizing, is that covered, or do I need to get an additional policy?
Yeah, I wouldn't quote, I'm not an attorney or an insurance professional, but here's what we know is if you have the NNA's E&O insurance policy, it specifically covers only notarial acts. So this is not a notarial act. It's not going to be covered. If you have a professional liability insurance that covers loan signings and other liability issues, you might talk with your independent agent on that, or just the company itself and see. But the other thing too is real important that Harry really reiterated several times on the call is where liability lies. And it is with the employer. They are the ones taking that on. And this is not, remember, even with the document IDs, they are not expecting you to be ID experts. It's the good faith law that he talked about. It's like, hey, you've got to look at it, make sure it looks legit, it's authentic, proceed with it. If you forget to check a box or it's filled out incorrectly, it's the employer that's still held liable for that. So keep that in mind as you consider your liability issues as well.
Great, thank you.
And also, you may not need a new policy. You can go to whoever wrote your policy and see if they can just put wording in there, because apostilles are, you don't have to be a notary. And we had them put language in there that says if we get in trouble, we're covered. So it may not be a new policy. It may be that the underwriting department will give you some wording.
Perfect. That's a great suggestion, actually, Judy. Thank you for that. Users iPhone, Sue, how's it going?
Hi, thank you. Well, thanks. Judy, when you mentioned it's hard for you to sign without putting notary public behind your name, I would say that that is just something that, in my opinion, should not be done, because we're not signing in our capacity as a notary. It has nothing to do with it. So I would never put my name there. I would just sign because you're only the authorized representative. But my question for Judy is, when you said online, when you go to E-Verify, you might just check a box that you checked the passport or something. Is that person coming to you and they're in front of you? I mean, they must be.
I haven't done E-Verify, to be really honest with you. But when the people come into me or I go to them, they either have, don't forget, a lot of them have studied they've looked on the internet, so they know they either have to have something from column A or one from B and one from C. I don't get involved with, they hand it to me. I don't give them suggestions.
Right.
I saw Harry speak a couple years ago and he set me on a good path. And
Great.
I don't give them suggestions. I also have laminated, and I wish it was right here. I thought it was. I meant to have it right here. I have laminated the 15 pages of instructions, and they're sitting here somewhere. And when someone comes in, they're here, and I can offer it to them. They don't have to take it with them. They just have to see it, and if they want to go through it, and if they want to look at it, it's the same thing with signings. You get people that they want to take that thing and devour it and read every single word of it, or they say, no, I don't need that. Just give me the I-9, so it's a good thing to have in your back pocket. And I saw a question about what I had said about a paragraph. If you just Google, is a notary permitted to use a stamp or seal on an I-9 verification, you will come up with one paragraph that says, no, a notary is not.
Diane posted that to the chat just so you guys know. Yeah.
Okay. And keep it with you, have it with you, and the site where you got it. And you'll save yourself 15 minutes of trying to explain or find a computer to go on and show them, I carry this with me because I just want everyone to know. So those are the things that you'll learn as you continue to do this kind of work. It's very easy work, and it will make you a good other income stream.
Sure. And Judy, you do not help them fill out page 1, right? Section 1.
I do not help them fill out page 1 at all.
Okay.
I
Right.
did want to ask Harry, and I didn't get a chance. I did want to ask him. Sometimes they come in and they've already signed section 1. And I allow that because I'm not notarizing. I'm not sure that I'm
I
right.
was surprised his mention of that as well, because we really are just authorizing what we checked,
That's exactly
our
right.
job.
That's
Okay.
exactly right. That's
Thank
what-
you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no
it.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, so I just want to talk a little bit about the fees too. And again, I just want to reiterate on California. In California, you must be a registered and bonded immigration consultant in order to work on I-9 paperwork. So Maria, if you have done that and you are an immigration consultant in California, I would love to hear from some of the other California immigration consultants that do this on what your income is on that one. Both Judy and I have already talked a little bit about fees, but let's do it again right now. Number one, this is not regulated by your notary public state statutes or any statutes that I'm aware of. You are working outside of your capacity as notary public. This does not have anything to do with your commission. You're acting as a credentialed professional, and there's no regulation on what you can charge. I have been paid anywhere from $50 to $100, but with my travel and all of that, I hold at 100. I've even been paid 150 for this, and it's worth it to the individuals, especially big corporations. They just need something handled, and they're willing to pay for the convenience of that. There are other companies, there are signing companies now that go out and they have contracts or partnerships or collaborations with those companies that need that. They filter it out and they might be paying you $20, $40, $50, and they might have their own negotiated rate on the other side. So that's kind of how those fees work. Christina, thank you for being here. How can we help today?
Hi there. I do have a question. So there was a clause in there that says for intermittent workers that you do not have to collect an I-9 form. So would that be independent contractors? And what about migrant farm workers? Do they fall under that classification?
I saw your question there. Now, so here's what I want to just first and foremost is this is not our responsibility to make that decision. So what at this point, like somebody's going to come to us and hire us to act as an agent for the employer. So it wouldn't be in our place to say, oh, you don't need this because you're a migrant farm worker. So that's what I want to just make super clear is that we're never going to be the ones making this decision. If they hire us to do this, we're going to do it as long as it's in integrity. So whether or not a migrant farm worker qualifies for this, we're not going to know that, right? Because we don't know how they're compensated, because he did say independent contractors are exempted from this. So we don't know what that is, but that's not where we're going to be making the decisions. Does that add some perspective or help clarify?
Yes, it does. I came in a little bit late because I couldn't find the link, so I missed that part about the contractors part. But thank you. Yes, it does.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you made it. Okay, guys, I think we did awesome Q&A even after Harry left us. I love that. Oh, Angela, I see your hand up. Sorry about that. We got one more question.
Unmute.
She's looking for it.
Hi,
No pressure.
everyone.
Hi, Angela.
Hi. Thank you, Judy, so much for your help. And Bill, it's so nice to meet you after following you for a while. My question is, so how will we be able to look at this video again? Just like when we finally get that opportunity and we're like, wait, let me go over what I thought I knew. So how do we do that? Thanks. That's my question.
No problem. Just PayPal me $497 and I will send the link right over to you. No. So what we'll do is I put together a replay page. I'll send that out. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it out today, but it'll get out tomorrow at the very latest. And then if it's all right with Judy, I'll upload this to my YouTube channel as well. So it'll be out and available for the public.
Can I put it on my YouTube channel too?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good.
Of course, Judy, you could just share it all over the place. We'll put it on social media
I-
and send
listen,
it
I
all
think
out too.
having almost 300 people this afternoon is really testament to how so many people want to learn so many new things. And if we can keep bringing these things, then I'm so excited because 300 people, that's fantastic, Bill. I mean, that was all about you.
That's a lot of people to geek out on stuff like this. So I love it. I feel like I've found my people as well, because we can, I mean, who shows up for an I-9 web training webinar, right?
In the middle
love
of
it.
Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're watching the replay right now, if you're on YouTube already, we will include in the replay links the actual presentation. Harry gave us permission to send out the presentation. So you'll have access to that, which means you'll have all of those links and all of those great resources that he talked about and showed us. All right, guys, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you so much for geeking out, growing yourself and your business on the Wednesday afternoon. And Judy, I'm so glad that you brought Harry over to us, and thanks for having this great idea.
You're welcome. Let's have a lot more.
Definitely. All right, guys, have a great week.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye, you guys.
Clubhouse tonight, 7:30.